So John, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule this morning to chat with me. I had a great tour yesterday here at 7 Acres and meeting your staff, who were like all surprisingly joyful and super knowledgeable. So it was both fun to see what real seriously scaled cannabis is looking, turning out to be, but also to see a staff that's really joyful in producing the cannabis plant in a very structured and analytical environment, right? Mm-hmm. So, what I wanted to talk to you about, though, today, as part of the company's visionary team, right? You help influence the direction of the company, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come here and meet you in person is because I've watched some of your videos of your public speaking gigs, and you are a hardcore whole plant guy like I am, right? And to hear the words coming out of your mouth about the importance of sticking with whole plant not only warms my heart, but I gotta say, it's becoming increasingly rare in scaled cannabis companies because as people scale up, manufacturing and whole plant are kind of two ends of a scale. And so you get people starting to cut corners and use isolates or take apart the plant and then put it back together in the extraction. And it's not what the plant's about for me. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you to kind of share with all of us what your vision is for how do you scale a company large enough that you are able to provide flower for soon an entire country and yet still hold your whole plant ideals.
So it's been a challenge, absolutely. For me, it started by giving the team here, so there's 650 people behind us, a very clear vision to really grow great cannabis, to really give the plant the same attention and love we would give it if we were growing 4 plants at home or a couple of lights, in the old world. And when we gave that vision and then started hiring really smart people, they never wavered from that North Star of, to put it very plainly, great cannabis. And how that aligns with what we're doing is we think whole plant, or I think whole plant is, historically a better medicine. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen enough anecdotally over 15 years to see the effect and the entourage effect. Learned a lot from your podcast as well.
Thank you.
I think that's also, there's more safety involved. So I like to say we have a 10,000 year informal safety study on flower and called simple extract use, where we've shown it's relatively safe for people, and some of your guests said exceptionally safe for people. But from a business perspective, when I put that hat on, when you do hard things well, that's where you build a defense around your business. So it might take you longer to get going, it might cost you a bit more investment, but what you have at the end is a more valuable business. So our view is, if we can make great flower, we can have a great business selling flower to Canadians, which we think, flower and pre-rolls, is going to be half or so of the market. But more importantly, that becomes the key ingredient when we get into derivative products and we start to look at making whole plant oils or tinctures, whole plant vapes, and eventually using whole plant products for other topicals and things like that. That's what's going to differentiate us. And because we put the work in here to create the ingredients, that's what gives us an advantage as a business.
Right on. So I've seen some of your videos from Idea City where you wax poetic about the importance of whole plant, right? It's beautiful, right? It's like a song, and I'm like, oh, speak it, brother, And I want to get a little bit of that now, because I bet you are involved with a whole bunch of like seriously deep pocket investment class people, and those are generally the folks who are pushing people in your position to cheapen up, right? And move away from whole plant because it's cheaper or easier or more efficient or whatever, right? And you have to constantly push back to that. And a lot of these folks, these investment folks, they don't have a cannabis background, right? Mm-hmm. So whole plant or not, it's widgets to some of these folks, right? So how do you explain to these folks why whole plant is important to be preserved at scale and it makes smart money?
Absolutely. So, this company, we've raised almost $250 million of capital for the business. So I have to always make sure I remind myself, investors are not here to fund my hopes and dreams. they're here to make a good business. But if I can align those two, that's where I get the most satisfaction, and what I've been really proud of our team being able to do that for the past 5 years. What it came down to was education about why this might be harder, it might take us longer, but it's going to give us a better, more defensible business over time. And let me give you an example. Let's say two companies want to put to market, a cannabinoid edible. Let's say for a CBD dominant wellness edible, whether it's a gummy or the format, doesn't matter for now. If we go and we breed a very specific plant for it, grow it in a very specific way, process, extract, and manufacture in a specific way, so we have a whole plant product. And I love what Ethan Rousseau said on your podcast about go back to the genetics and breed what you want, don't remix it in the lab. Now we have a product that maybe not every consumer is going to care about, but the consumers that really care about that we think will be more brand loyal and potentially pay more over time, better for our business. Compare that against if we just wanted to put 10 milligrams of generic CBD isolate in it. We might have a good business this year, we might have a good business next year, but what happens when Jameson's Vitamins, so the biggest vitamin company in Canada, I believe, wants to make that same product? They can call up the same vendor, get the same CBD isolate, and they are way better than we are about putting vitamin powders into products. They've been doing it for a long time. So all of a sudden, we lose that competitive advantage we've built in the plants. We've lost that differentiation to speak to consumers, and actually we're behind because they have better relationships with national drugstores and national retailers. And at the end of the day, we will lose as a business. And that's what we've educated our shareholders and investors about. That's what we educate our management team on. How are we going to win over the long run? And I think that's whole plant. And for me personally, what could be better than that? Aligns exactly with my personal vision on why cannabis works and how it works. And let's be serious. It's not a coincidence that those two came together, but it was a lot of work to get everybody on the bus driving in the same direction.
Yeah, right on. And it's interesting too, because to hear you talk about your product and the customers and the whole plant. In my head, I'm always thinking about whole plant for patients, right? I'm very, the show's very patient-centric. My background is very patient-centric. And yet, while there's a lot of isolate type products in the market that more rec type users are using, if you give them a whole plant product, you get all these like positive responses because it's a better experience for everybody, right? Anybody who has access to whole plant products ends up loving them, right? So, but I know your background because you and I have had some time in the car together, and I know your background is patient oriented, right? Mm-hmm. You were working in Canada, reaching out to patients, helping to provide, helping to get the the early compassionate care retailers, in business and staying in business. So you're not like one of these other entrepreneurs who sold their dry cleaning company and are coming over from the green rush, right? Yeah. You've been around for a long time. So to what degree do you think that it informs your decisions here at technically you're at Supreme, but today we're at 7 Acres. Your role at Supreme helping guide these businesses, to what degree do you think that's informed because of the time you put in dealing with real sick people every day?
I think one of my biggest advantages as an entrepreneur in cannabis, I don't think this plant was invented a couple of years ago, and I think a lot of people think it's new. For your American viewers, this is going to be very odd. In Canada, it was a unique concept as a business to say people who smoke cannabis, whether it's medical or recreational or wellness, whatever your purpose is, if you smoke cannabis, you want good cannabis. You want it to look good, smell good, taste good. 90% of people watching, I assume you're going to think, duh, everybody knows that. In the Canadian space, that was a revolutionary idea, which is less of a compliment to us and more of a concerning question for the rest of the industry. But that's what we approached it, and what we started with flower. That was all you could do in the Canadian industry, and we said, look, if we're going to sell flower, whether we might pick different genetics to cultivate, depending if it's a medical product at the end of the day or a recreational consumer at the end of the day. But what we found was their drivers for people that are smoking their cannabis for whatever reason are the same, right? They want it to smell nice, they want it to taste nice, they don't want a black ash, and then they want whatever that effect they're seeking is. So to build a platform that can grow good cannabis that smells good, tastes good, burns nice, think of that as an agnostic platform. We can put high CBD strains on, like some of them we grow now, that's maybe more wellness suited or medical suited. We're starting to just scratch the surface on minor cannabinoids, or we can grow high THC for whatever that purpose is. But the platform is the same: grow good cannabis. And when we get into our derivative products, it's that good cannabis, whole plant cannabis, that we treat very gently in our extractions and formulations, that we believe is going to help make us different over time.
Right on. So it's funny because when I talk to cannabis entrepreneurs, many of them like the monopoly mindset. Like they don't want anybody else in the market. I mean, like look at Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and where they would just be happy to be the only one providing cannabis to everybody. But you're very encouraging of other entrepreneurs and helping people come up and giving people good advice. And so let's finish up with this. There are people not only in Canada and the United States, but really all around the world who are putting together cannabis companies. Mm-hmm. And they have got to decide what their vision is for their company and what kind of quality products they're going to put out and where they're going to draw their lines, right? Clearly you and I both talk about whole plant a lot, but it's very hard for some new people to the business of cannabis to step into the power that comes with producing whole plant cannabis products. Mm-hmm. What advice would you offer to entrepreneurs who are at the formulating stages of their business to encourage them to go whole plant for everybody's benefit?
So I'd say first, if you're starting a cannabis business generally, forget the cannabis word and just focus on the business part. Meaning, you start with your customer. Who do you want to sell to? What are you going to sell them? What are you going to do to delight them or make them feel better or whatever your business purpose is? And then start working back, what can I sell that product for? What's it going to cost me to produce? What kind of infrastructure or facilities do I need or licenses and staff? And really understand, is that a viable business first? Something is very important to understand. Cannabis is not a magical product in a business sense. It's got margins like anything else. It's got costs, it's got competition. So start first, does your business make sense? What I would encourage people to think about is whole plant a way that you can differentiate your business and make it more successful over time? Make yourself less subject to the competition of large non-cannabis companies who at some point soon are going to start buying isolates and dropping them into products. To make yourself, if you're not a big fan of large corporate cannabis and maybe you think they're not doing a great job producing high quality products or flower or whole plant products, find that niche or that white space that you want to drive a Mack truck through to make your business successful. And my belief is when we survey the market in Canada or we look at a lot of the US, what we find is if you look at smaller companies, there's a lot of people doing really great things with the plant, mostly staying whole plant, and they have a really core committed consumer group that's very happy to work with them. When you go to some of the more scaled companies, it's more just about supply chain and distribution and being there, and sometimes the products aren't as good as maybe they should be. And I think we should look at that as a big opportunity to take market share, to take consumers over time and be successful. And I mean that whether you're a lifestyle business where your goal is to have your family and friends employed and everyone makes a decent paycheck, or you're a company like ours. I mean, don't get me wrong, we'd love to earn the monopoly over time and compete people out of the market and be the last guy standing. We don't want to do that because the law made it that way. That's not fun for me. We don't want to do that because the police went and knocked on the door of the people that came before us. I also don't agree with that. We want to produce better products that make consumers love us more, and we win over the long run. But I think whether you're big or small, you got to go back to that fundamental concept. What's going to make you different? Consumers only have a limited amount of funds to spend. Even if they have insurance, a limited amount of insurance coverage to spend. Why are they going to choose to spend that with you? And I think that mindset is no different than if I'm going to start selling widgets or cell phones or anything else. It's figure out that product that makes you special and unique and tell that story to your customers and for us. And I think for a lot of people, if you look on the whole plant side, you're going to find very fertile territory to build a brand, differentiate your products, and make a successful business. You are going to work hard with it.
Yeah, you are gonna work harder. Yeah. So, man, thank you so much for sticking to your guns about whole plant. There's a lot of whole plant people at kind of like the lower echelons where I am, but guys like you who are dealing with 9-figure businesses, whole plant is beaten out of most everybody, and the fact that you're sticking to it and creating a model and making money so that people see that it's possible, I think that it just it encourages everybody that we might be able to have a whole plant future. So thanks a bunch.
Absolutely. Thank
Right
you.
on. Take it
Appreciate
easy.
it.